You ever been stressed, worried, anxious, confused? Maybe all of the above. Are you worried about your next paycheck or your diet? What about your grades? Will they be good enough to get you into that college? Are the deadlines at work piling up? While your marriage is falling apart? Do you feel like a bill is due every day? And with all these repairs, you can never get ahead? Does it seem like the whole world is closing in around you? How can you win the war against worry when you just feel overwhelmed?
Well, how's everybody doing? Are we good? All right. Welcome to Lifepoint. It's an honor having you guys with us. My name is Jeff. I'm the pastor here, and we just are in a series right now called Overwhelmed. It's kind of like this room right now is a bit overwhelmed with people, which is why we're excited about adding a fourth service. And so you guys will have a little more breathing room coming up in just a few weeks. But guys, I'm super thrilled about all that God's doing in our church right now. And I want to ask you a question as we get started today. Have you ever signed up for something thinking it was going to be one thing, and then when you got in the middle of it, you discovered it was something totally different? Have you ever had that? Like, you got in the middle of something, you're like, this is not what I signed up for. If you have, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Just see some of you are like, yeah. So I had this summer, this has happened to me a bunch in life, but this summer, more than ever, this happened to me. Back in June, I had decided I was going to take some time off, was enjoying a little bit of breathing time, and for me and three of my best friends, we're going to go backpacking, right? And some of you are like, backpacking, what is that? It's like camping where you carry everything with you. All right, anybody here love camping? Anybody here, your idea of camping is like Holiday Inn, right? Okay, there we go. Some of you were like, you mean like in the woods? Yes, that's what we were going to do. We were going to go backpacking, and so we were going to the Smoky Mountains, and I was so excited because long time ago, like probably almost 12 years ago, maybe even more, maybe 14 years, I had a kind of a camping-themed Christmas. So everything I got was camping supplies, backpack and sleeping bag and all this stuff. And I haven't used it in ages, and I thought, this is going to be great. I'm getting out with some of my best friends. We're going to hit the trail. One of our guys had plotted about a 40-mile loop that we were going to do. We were going to do it over about 4 days, and it was just going to be an incredible time. And so we drive out, we hit the Smoky Mountains, and we get to our starting point, and day one was so incredible. We hiked like 9 miles that day. We get to our campsite, and it is like right there at the edge of a lake, and it's just beautiful. I mean, the weather's perfect, and you know, I mean, you're hiking in the summer, so it could be hot, but it was perfect. And we have our, get our fire going, and I get my little gadgets out that I haven't used in ages. So I got my little camping stove going, and I'm like the chef, and we're all having a blast. We're sitting around just talking about life. I mean, this was amazing. And I had even decided that this trip I was going to do a hammock instead of a tent. So I bought a hammock and had it strung up between trees. And, because it's warm, I got this fleece sleeping bag. I even bought a little camping pillow. I mean, this was going to be just a couple days of unplugging, hanging with my friends, connecting with God, nature, all of that. And it was awesome. So awesome. I remember going into this like, this is going to be so much fun. And it was right up until around 3 a.m. of night one. 3 a.m., I started feeling this wet, cold sensation. And I'm like, what is going on? And I'm so tired and delirious. I sit up a little bit because someone's yelling my name. I'm like, what is that? What's going on? I sit up, I look around. And you've been so tired, you don't have a clue what's going on. And so I just flop back down in my hammock. I don't even realize that by this point, my hammock is now basically almost, like sitting on the ground. I'm soaked. I don't know what's going on. And then I hear my name again. And I pop back up, and I hear, it's raining. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness. Now, some of you who camp a lot, you're like, well, but you're under a tarp, right? Wrong. We have a tarp, but I said, look at how beautiful of a night this is. There's not a cloud in the sky. We don't need to put up the tarp. So the tarp was on the ground covering our backpacks so that they wouldn't get soaked, and our food was hanging in a tree. So I get out of my hammock. I can't even make sense of what's going on. I'm delirious. I slip my flip-flops on. I got my sweatpants that are now getting wet. I grab my fleece sleeping bag. I grab my little pillow, and all I can think to do is get out of the rain. So what do? I carry my stuff over to where the tarp is. I lift it up, and I crawl into the tarp, and I lay back down. Like, we could have strung it up, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I crawl under the tarp. I fall asleep. Out. A couple hours later, I wake up, and it is pouring down rain. And now all the rain that's coming down onto the tarp is now going into the tarp, and I'm at like the low end, and I'm literally sleeping in a puddle of water. and it's beginning to get chilly, but I'm in my bag, my fleece sleeping bag that is now totally drenched. And I remember somewhere early in the morning, it was still dark, thinking, I'm miserable, and I've got to pee so bad. Right? Now, if you've ever gone camping, you're like, if I can just hold it till morning, all right, we'll be good. But I couldn't. I mean, I'm laying in a puddle of water. Probably would have been best if I had just gone. I would have got warmer. But I didn't. That would be gross, right? So I get up, I go, I come back. I can't get back in my soaking wet fleece sleeping bag. I can't get in it, and it's wet. So I just lay there, I cover up with it, and I fall back asleep. I'm shivering. And somewhere in the early morning, I feel this incredible warmth just coming over my neck and my body. And I'm like, what is that? I can't figure out what that is. And so I'm looking around and I can't see what it is. There's just backpacks behind me, and I lay back down, and a little while later I feel this warmth again. And I sit up just enough to see that one of the other guys that was sleeping in a hammock as well had crawled under the tarp as well, had nuzzled his way up to the back of my neck, was breathing down my neck. You're miserable when you're like, you realize that and you go, I don't even care. I'm sliding just a little bit closer. I'm like, yes, more of that, please. So we swore what happens in the Smokies stays in the Smokies. We're not going to tell anybody. So if you guys would keep that between us, it'd be great. But I remember waking up that next morning like, that was miserable. That was miserable. And so nothing would dry out for the rest of the trip. I am wringing my fleece sleeping bag out. It is double the weight. My pack is heavier. My clothes are heavier. Our shoes are drenched. And we set out that day for what became the most miserable hike of my life. We had the next day, we had this ridiculous hike crossing 13 river crossings. And we had to go up it was incredibly steep incline. And we get to our shelter that night, and there's a sign that says, this shelter is closed due to bear activity. I'm like, are you kidding me? This shelter is now open. Bring on the bears is what I'm thinking. We'll fight these things off. We'll take our chances. And so we had a whole nother day that was planned, and we woke up that morning of day 3, and we're miserable. We can't get a fire going. Everything's drenched. Our clothes are still wet. And we just decided, executive decision, the car is 14 miles away. We can take a shortcut, get back to the car, and so we just made a decision to get out of there. We're like, let's just get back to the car, and we will replan another trip another time. And so we're 3 miles from the car. We've stopped for just a moment to kind of regroup, eat a little something. And about that point, I felt like I had an eyelash or a piece of dirt in my eye. And so I just kept messing with it for the last 3 miles of the hike. I'm trying to get this thing out of my eye, and we get back to the car, and I film a video. I had this little video camera with me, making videos and taking pictures of the whole trip. And I filmed this video, and when I finished putting the camera down, one of the guys that's with me goes, dude, what happened to your eye? And at that point, I realized that this trip had gone from awesome to awful to Lord knows what happened to my eye. And I thought it'd be fun to share with you guys a little bit of our experience. Here's the video that I filmed at the very end. You can see what happened to my eye. All right, what started out as an adventure turned into survival. We have made it. Men, well done.
Made it.
Woo! Survived. The car is still here. Wonderful, wonderful. So I had no idea. Turns out I think I'd gotten stung by something because it took about 24 hours for that thing to go down. But I don't know how good of a glimpse you got of it. We actually have a close-up. Let's put that up there. Look at that. That looks like I straight up got beat down by Tyson. That's rough. And I love what I said when I went back and watched that video. I said, what started out as an adventure has turned into survival. And today, as we continue this Overwhelmed series, we're talking about family, we're talking about marriage, and if we're being honest, that same statement could be applied to many of our relationships and family. We could say, what started out as an adventure has turned into survival. And so I want you to get a note card out. I'm going to give you several things to write down. You'll find these gray note cards. They're on the seat back in front of you, or if you're on the front row, just reach under your chair. They're underneath your seat. I've titled this message, Modern Family. Modern Family. Because the modern family today could be described as overwhelmed. Family can be overwhelming. And so I want to sort of size up the room for a moment. If you are married, would you raise your hand? Married people, raise your hand. Put them up, put them up. All right, lots of married folks. If you are single today, raise your hand. Raise your hand, keep them up for a moment. Single people, keep them up, look around. Just look around. It's a good time to just hey, if someone can't, people are waving, they're over here, right? I'm just trying to help, all right? So if you see somebody that looks good, hey, you got lunch plans. We're here to help. Just trying to help people. So here's the thing. If you're married, go back to your wedding day, all right? Go back to that day. If you're single, just envision what that day may be, what that may be like. For my wife and I, we've been married for 16 years. And so June 6th, 1998 was our wedding day. We stood at an altar. We had friends and family, and we made promises to one another. We said, for better or worse, right? For richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, and then something about till death shall part us. And we made these promises together. And what I can say is that after 16 years of marriage, you don't get one without the other, right? You're like, well, I meant the richer part, and I meant the better part, but the truth is you don't get the better without the worse. As a matter of fact, I would say you don't get to the better without going through the worse. You don't get to the richer without going through the poor. The truth is, in every relationship, there are struggles and there are challenges, and then you throw kids in the mix and everything gets crazy. And it can be overwhelming. Here's what I know. Nobody gets married and nobody starts a family thinking, man, this is going to be so hard. This is going to derail us. But the truth is, it does. It does, and if we're not careful, it will totally blindside us. We don't go into it thinking about how challenging it's going to be. But if you talk to any married couple, they'll tell you it's not always easy. And raising kids is not for the faint of heart. If raising kids was as much fun as making kids, good gracious, right? But it's a challenge. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you 3 foundational truths. Then we're going to look at God's Word, and then we're going to get extremely practical in our time together. So I want you to write down these 3 foundational truths, and here's the first one. The first one is this: marriage is God's idea. It's important we understand that marriage is God's idea. This is not a man-made idea. If you want to see where it all originates, go back to the story of Genesis. God said it's not good for man to be alone. He creates woman. She is his helpmate, his complement, and he brings them together. And many times the Bible says, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife. And so marriage is God's idea. And why this is so important to understand is because we live in a culture that says marriage doesn't work. But I want to tell you that what God creates works. But in order for it to work, we've got to go back to God's instructions and say, God, what does it take for this to work? What does your word say? And we're going to look at that today. So marriage is God's idea. Here's the second foundational truth that we need to establish today. And it is this: children are a gift. Children are a gift. So you're like, can I return them? No. I know they don't always feel like a gift. They don't always feel like a blessing. And the best thing you can do is re-gift them for a season to grandma or a friend's house, right? Like, our kids haven't played in a while. Can they go to your house, right? That's okay. But it's important to know children are a gift, because if you're a parent, you know there are moments where you are just like, what in the world has happened with my kids? Like, you guys are crazy. And we realize they got it on us. They inherited it, right? Children are a gift. Here's the third foundational truth that we want to establish, and it is this: a life out of control is evidence that God is not in control. Let me say that again so you can write it down. A life out of control is evidence that God is not in control. Here's why I say that. Because God is a God of order. What God creates works. God did not create marriage and family to be something that taxes us and stresses us and overwhelms us and wears us out. He created it to be a blessing. He created it to be a gift. And so if marriage is God's idea, then it's important that we stop and we say, God, if you created this, how in the world am I supposed to do this in a way that is going to experience your blessing? How do I get your hand of favor? And that's what we're going to talk about today. If you have a Bible, I want you to open it to the book of Ephesians. Ephesians is in the New Testament. And if you're like, what's the New Testament? If you got a Bible, just go to the table of contents in the beginning and find it. If you don't have a Bible with you today, we've got all the scripture will be on the screens. And if you've got maybe a smartphone that has a Bible app, feel free to take it out. Nobody's going to be judging you for being on your phone. Use it. Tweet something that's said. Put something on Facebook. You'll encourage people that maybe aren't at church today. And so I encourage you to do that. If you don't own a Bible, we'd love to give you one before you leave here at Lifepoint. And so before you take off home, stop by our lounge right there in the lobby and just say, can I get one of those Bibles? It's our gift to you. You don't owe us anything. We just want you to have it. So as you're looking, go to Ephesians 5. And here's what's important. Here's what you need to know. In Ephesians, the writer of Ephesians, his name is Paul. We know him as the Apostle Paul. And he's written a large majority of the New Testament. He's written a lot of the New Testament of the Bible. Now, something interesting to know about Paul is Paul's a single guy, all right? Typically, I would discourage getting marriage advice from a single dude, okay? Single dudes don't know anything about getting married, all right? It's kind of like getting financial advice from your broke cousin, okay? Don't do that. You want to get advice from somebody that's been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and succeeded, okay? But this is an exception I'll give because the Apostle Paul is writing under the inspiration of the Spirit of God. And I also think it's important to note that as a single guy, he's not writing like he didn't just get in a fight with his wife and comes back and is like, hey, honey, God gave me something else to write. You should read this. Right? So he's not trying to make a point. He's sharing what God's instructions are for our life. And so if you're looking for something to read this week, just read through Ephesians, and you're going to find Ephesians 4. Paul's talking about how we should navigate and live our life, and he talks about our most important relationship, which is our relationship with God. And then when you go to Ephesians 5, he talks about the second most important relationship, which is our relationship with our spouse. And then in Ephesians 6, he talks about the third most important relationship, and that's the relationship with our kids. And so what I want us to do is look at Ephesians 5 and see what Paul has to say about living a life that it honors God and that God blesses in our families and in our marriages. So here's what Paul does. He starts off with the ladies, because ladies go first. Paul's a gentleman. He says, ladies, I'm going to talk to you first. Then he's going to shift and talk to the guys, and then we'll go back and forth, and we'll address the kids here at the end. So ladies, we're going to go first, and we're going to share with you what Paul has to say. So ladies, if you're ready, I want the ladies to say, I'm ready. All right, ladies are ready. Here we go. We're going to look at Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22, and Paul shares some advice and words of wisdom to the ladies. And here's what he says. Ephesians 5, verse 22, he says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. Now, I don't know if you could feel that, but the room just got tense. Did you feel that? Ladies were like, wait a second. What is this? Let's, all right. Ladies, here's the first word I want you to write down, okay? I'm going to give you 2 words today. Here's the first one. The first word I want you to write down is the word submit. Submit. Now, I will admit that this word is not a popular one today, especially in church circles, especially in our world. This word submit gets a pretty bad rap these days, right? We say submit, and we think of like a, MMA move, right? We're thinking of like an arm bar. Like if MMA describes your relationship, that's probably not a good thing. So what does this word mean? Because it does cause tension and it does get misused. The word submit in this context simply means to place or arrange under. So you could say to place yourself under the authority of your husband. Now this verse tells you that you should submit yourself to your husband as you do to the Lord. So the way that you would submit yourself to the Lord, you should live and submit yourself to your husband. Now here's the problem with this verse, is many times this is the only verse that some guys know. Right? It's the one verse they can quote you. Pastor, I told her that she needs to submit. That's what the Bible says. Like, one, you are a loser, okay? Guys, this is a good verse to know, but you can never quote it. Never, ever, 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 ever. It's not going to go well, all right? Honey, you just got to submit. Did you read the Bible? Here's the problem. Dudes use this verse without ever reading any of the verses around it, okay? You see, if you back up just one verse to verse 21, here's what Paul says. He says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submission's a two-way street. That I should submit to my wife should submit to me. And the reason that we have this mutual submission in our relationship is not because we're always, good and kind individuals. I'm not told to submit to my wife because she's just so honoring some days, and then on the days she's not, I don't have to. I'm told that I submit to her out of my love and reverence for Christ. So the reason I submit in my marriage relationship is not because my spouse deserves it, but because I love and I'm living a life of obedience to Christ because he instructs us. I think if in our marriages we got just this one principle working right, imagine how many other challenges would just fall by the wayside. Imagine a marriage of 2 individuals trying to outserve one another, right? And just it would change the dynamic in our relationship. But his instruction to the ladies in your first word is to live a life of submission towards your husband. Now, guys, it's your turn. We're going to kind of turn the table and we're going to talk to you for a moment. So, guys, if you're ready, in your most manly voice, say, I'm ready. The ladies just totally made you guys look bad. That was weak. weak dudes. The dudes are like, I don't know, you just told her to submit. What are you going to say to me? Here's what I want to say to you. Look at verse 25. Guys, it's your turn. Verse 25 says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and I want you to look at these next three words, and gave himself up for her. Now, guys, quick question. How did Jesus love the church? How did he model that? He died for her. He laid down his life for her. So, guys, here's your first word. This is what I want you to write down. Guys, write down the word sacrifice. Sacrifice. Jesus loved the church so much that he sacrificed his life for her. He laid it down, and because of his death, she could be forgiven. Because of his death, it made it possible for her to be holy, to be sinless. Guys, that is our model. Now, here's what I've found. When a husband is sacrificing and laying down his life, his pride, his preferences for his wife, the natural response is for her to live a life of submission towards him. Guys, you are instructed by God to be the spiritual head or the leader of the home. You can't delegate this away, but many guys do. And I'll be the first to admit, it is easier for me to sit on this stage and lead a church of 1,500 people than it is to go home and lead my home of 5. It's not easy. Being a husband is not easy. Being a parent is not easy. But it's what we're called to do. You're called to lead. This does not mean you're called to be the boss, to be the Lord, to be the master, to be the dictator. You're not the king. You're the leader. Your family is a team, and you are the captain. And it is your job to lead them in a way that's going to be honoring towards them and towards Christ. So ladies, your first word is submit. Guys, your first word is sacrifice. Now jump down to verse 33. In verse 33, Paul comes back and he addresses the guys one more time and the ladies, and look at what he says. He says, however, each one of you also must, say this word with me, must love his wife as he loves himself. He says, guys, you must love your wife. Guys, here's your second word. Write this down. Your second word is the word love. Love. Most guys would say, I do love my wife. I love my wife. But this word love, can we agree? This word love has kind of lost its meaning in our world today, right? We're like, man, I love pizza, right? I love ice cream. I love my new iPhone. I love my wife. You're like, well, love doesn't seem like it carries as much weight today as it used to. Well, what I want you to know is that the way this word is used in this passage, it's not just some casual use of the word love. Here's what it means. It's the word agape. Agape. It means unconditional love. On 3, I want everybody to say agape. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Agape. It is unconditional. It means that your wife can't earn your love and she can't lose your love. And it means that on the days you wake up and you don't even feel like loving, you're going to choose to love. Love's not a feeling. Guys, there's nothing your wife should have to do to earn or qualify for your love. And on the contrary, there's nothing that she should be able to do to cause you to stop loving her. So my question to you guys is this. Does your wife feel loved? Emphasis on the word feel. Most wives know that you love them, but they may not feel loved. I want you to see that this is not a suggestion. This is a command. Husbands, you must unconditionally love your wife. Does she feel loved? See, most of us guys, this is so foreign to us. We're like, of course she feels love. She knows I love her, right? I married her, right? I mean, I told her I loved her. If anything changes, I'll let her know, right? That's how us guys, we go through life. We don't wake up going, I just don't feel like you love me, right? Us guys, that's not the way that we're wired. We want to be loved, but we don't function on our feelings like ladies do. We're not wired the same way. So the question is, guys, what is it that you do or say that causes your wife to feel love? This is a great conversation piece to have later today. Just sit down and say, when was the last time, honey, I did something that caused you to feel loved? And don't get defensive when she's like, well, there was that time. It's been a while, right? Just listen, because she's going to give you some incredible insight. Guys, your second word is the word love. It's an unconditional love. Let's go back to Ephesians 5:33 and look at the rest of this verse. It goes on and it says, and the wife, look at this with me, and the wife must, say this word with me, the wife must respect her husband. The wife must respect her husband. Ladies, your second word is the word respect. Respect. Sometimes we think, well, if he would do something respectable, I would respect him. Right? Ladies, you don't have to do something lovable in order for him to love you. He shouldn't have to do something respectable in order to be respected. What love is to a woman, respect is to a man. Respect. This is the Greek word phobeo. Phobeo. On three, everybody say phobeo. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Phobeo. Phobeo means to be in awe of, to revere, to highly value. To revere, to be in awe of, to highly value, to respect your husband. Think about it. Respect, right? R-E-S-P-E-C-T, right? Who wrote it? Does anybody know? Say it if you know. Who wrote it? Who wrote it? Aretha Franklin. You were wrong. You were wrong, all right? Little known fact, R-E-S-P-E-C-T was written by Otis Redding 2 years earlier. Respect is a big deal to a man. It could be an anthem for a man. Respect is currency to a man. There was a study done with 400 men, and they asked them this question: would you rather be left alone and unloved, or would you rather feel inadequate and disrespected? So alone and unloved, or inadequate and disrespected. 74% of the men said, I'd rather be alone and unloved than to be disrespected. Because respect is a big deal to a man. Now, ladies, my question to you is this: does your husband feel respected? Does he feel like when he comes home that he's in a place that respects him? You see, when a guy does not feel respected, he will respond in a manner that is unloving. When a wife feels unloved, she will respond in a manner that is disrespecting. And it creates this crazy cycle in our relationships. And here's why this is such a big deal. Because when the marriage is functioning the way God designed it, there's not a storm that comes your way that you can't weather. There's not a challenge that the world can throw at you that you can't stand together on. But when we can begin to be divided in our marriage relationship, we can be totally overtaken in life. We can get totally overwhelmed. So Paul starts off in Ephesians 4, and he talks about our relationship with God. Ephesians 5, the second most important relationship with our spouse. And then in Ephesians 6, he talks about the third most important relationship and our kids. I want to show you this briefly. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, he says this. He says, children. Now, if you're in middle school or high school and you're in this room right now, I want you to pay attention to this. He says, children. I know you don't feel like a child and you haven't ordered up the kids menu in a while, but for this purpose, he's speaking to you, okay? Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And all the parents said, amen. And then he goes on, he says, honor your father and mother. And again, the parents said, amen. And here's what he says. Now, here's what I want you to see. Obedience and honor is a commandment with a promise. With a promise. Look at verse 3. Here's the promise. If you will honor and obey your parents, the promise is that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long-lasting life on the earth. If you're a student today, here's your 2 words. Here's your 2 words. Obey and honor. Obey and honor. I don't know if there's a culture or a generation before this one that I feel like offers more disrespect towards their parents than ever before. Maybe it's just the media. Maybe it's everybody having a voice on Facebook. I don't know what it is, but I see a tremendous amount of disrespect. And it amazes me, and I did the same thing when I was a kid. I would put more stock, and you see students put more stock in their teenage friends' advice and wisdom than the very parents that brought them into the world, right? Isn't that crazy? Like, if you're a middle school or high school student, hear me on this. Your parents love you way more than you'll ever comprehend. Your parents have sacrificed way more than you'll ever understand. And they are way wiser than you'll ever give them credit for. Why would you dare go to your friend that has no more life experience than you and put more value and trust in their opinion? Someday you'll hit this point where you go, oh my goodness, my parents were brilliant. Just learn that now. Listen to them now. Be obedient and honor them now. And I'm telling you, it will go well with you. You will have more responsibility. You'll have more privilege. And you'll live a long life. That's what Scripture says. So obey and honor. A healthy family functions with order. There's order in the family. Our relationship with God is first. Our spouse is second. Our kids are third. And here's what happens. In our relationships, the challenge is to get these out of order. And when they get them out of order is when our families begin to get overwhelmed and we begin to get stressed and we begin to function in a manner that we were never created to function with. And so, for Michelle and I, we've been married for 16 years, and over 16 years, we have not always done it right. We've kind of messed things up a lot in the beginning. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But even when we have functioned properly, God first, spouse second, kids third, life still has a way of making us feel overwhelmed. So we want to, in just a moment, I'm going to have my wife join me on stage because she's the brilliant one in our home. But before we do that, we thought it would be fun to invite you into our home. So here's a quick video of our house and sort of how things function at the Kapusta home. Check this out.
Hi, we're the Kapustas. Welcome to our home.
We've been married for 16 years.
And we have 3 kids.
2 dogs.
And 1 dragon. We have Riley, who's 13, Kenley's 11, and Emery's 10.
And with 3 kids across 2 schools, with sports and homework and schedules, life gets a little bit busy.
Yeah, so welcome to a day in the life of our family. The kids just got home from school and they've gotten started on their homework. Jeff's still at work, but I'm getting ready to prep some dinner.
Well, for our family, physical fitness is a big deal. So when Michelle is done prepping supper, Riley and I hook up and we hit the gym so we can hit our beast mode on.
While Jeff is working out with Riley, I bring Kinley to gymnastics.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't get a request from Emery to come down here to the skate park. So while Michelle's driving a kid one way across the city, I'm usually heading down this way for an hour or 2 just so he can get a skate session in. Then we got to jump in the car, bus back, and get dinner ready. Yeah, by far the most stressful part of our home.
Thank you, Jesus, for our food and the many blessings. Amen.
Well, there you have it. It's a little snippet into our home. And guys, this is my wife, Michelle, for those of you that never had the
Hi.
privilege of meeting my wife. And the reason I wanted her to join me on stage is because in our house, I am the high-strung, high-maintenance one. I know that probably seems hard for you to envision me in that role. I tend to be that way, and she is the even keel, the calm in the storm, the wisdom in the house. And so I wanted her to share with you just a little bit of kind of some of the challenges we face and how we've managed to navigate them. And I acknowledge this, all of our families are different, okay? All of our families are different. You got a picture into our home and with our 3 kids. And I know that in this room, we've got all different types of families. We've got single-parent families. We've got blended families. We've got dual-income families. We've got single-income families. We've got families with 1 kid. We've got families with like 5 or more kids. God bless you. And so I know that all families are different, but there are some challenges that I think we all face that have a tendency of overwhelming us. And we want to talk about 4 of the probably most overwhelming areas that we all wrestle with. And so none of these are going to be like, oh, light bulb moments. I didn't realize that overwhelms me. But maybe we'll get to share a little bit of how we've been able to navigate some of these difficulties. So the first one is this. You may want to write this down. The first area that can overwhelm us at home is our schedules. Our schedules.
Yeah, I think the root in schedules being a problem is lack of communication. I know I was raised in a home that we didn't communicate very well, and so I brought that into our marriage. And so early on, we didn't communicate about schedules. I had 3 kids, 3 years and younger, and I was trying to keep things together at home, and he had a job that he loved, but he was trying to be very successful in, so he would put in more hours. And kind of not communicate that to me. So
kind of not communicate. I like how you were nice to me.
Yeah. So, I would work all day, keeping the kids straight and make dinner, expecting him to come home from dinner. And there were lots of nights he just didn't come home. He forgot to tell me, oh, I have band practice tonight, or I have something else planned. So that was really one area in our life early on that really put a wedge between us. And truthfully, I almost left him because of it, because I just got so tired expecting him to be there and not be there. And I told him, if we don't get this figured out, I'm going to leave. I'm taking the kids to my mom's house, and I'm done with this.
Yeah, that wakes you up quickly. That wakes you up quickly. When you work for a church and your wife is threatened to take the kids back home, like not our home, but, mom's house. And I almost lost my family, and I almost lost my job because I didn't know how to communicate, and I didn't know how to manage a schedule. And I was driven to succeed, just like most guys are, and so it was just a mess for us. And even still, we wrestle with the challenges of schedule because there's so much to do. right? I mean, we want our kids to be involved in sports and activities and, time with friends, and then the friends get involved in another sport, so your kid wants to do that other sport. And, I mean, we had a time where all three of our kids at the same time were doing 3 sports, and they were, we had like 7 practices in a matter of like 6 days, and literally we'd see each other in the morning, and we'd shovel some dinner in, and we'd, head off to different directions, and then we'd see each other at night. And if you're not careful, your family gets to be more like a shuttle service, right, than a family. And it really had a way of, putting a stress on our family. And we knew we can do this for like a couple months, but we can't do this forever. We had to find a way of saying no to certain things. It's okay as a parent to say no to something that is good because you're reserving a space for what is best in your family and in your life.
Yeah. So one tool that we found that really helps us out, and it's a tool, you have to use it for it to work, but we use Google Calendar. And so throughout the week, if things come up, if there's things that I need to do or meetings, and the same goes for him, or the kids' schedules, sports schedules, I'll put that on the calendar. He'll put his things on the calendar. We share the calendar so we both can see it, and then we both kind of have an idea of what's going on. So maybe at the beginning of the week, we'll just take a look at the calendar, see what's coming up, so nothing takes us, by surprise. And also just be flexible too, because some things, come up that you weren't planning on, or somebody forgot to tell you or put on the calendar. So just be flexible.
Yeah, for me, I was big at assuming. I would assume that because I mentioned something in passing as I was walking out the door that she caught it and it's on the calendar and we all know. We don't know. We don't know. And oftentimes, so much tension is there just because of lack of communication or poor planning or simply being overloaded that I just want you to know, it's okay to say no, learn to communicate, get on the same page when it comes to the schedule. You may even need to have a scheduling meeting where you sit down together and just say, let's look at the schedule because it's out of control. So that's the first area that we've wrestled with, and we feel like we've won that battle, even though it continues on. The second area that you can totally feel overwhelmed at home is housework. Housework.
Yeah, ladies, this mostly falls on us, but and one thing to realize with housework is just to recognize the season of life that you're in. If you're at home with young kids, your house might not look amazing like somebody who has kids maybe that are out of the house. So just accept where you are in life and accept that you're not going to be able to do everything at certain seasons. I promise when your kids get older, you will have more time to spend on your house. But right now, maybe your kids are small, and it's just a struggle to get through the day. You're just trying to survive. That's where I was when my kids were little. But also, think of it from your kids' point of view. Like one day, when they get older and they're able to look back on their life, are they going to say, oh my goodness, my mom was the best house cleaner. We had the cleanest house on the block. I'm so happy for that. Or are they going to say, our house might not have been the cleanest, but my mom spent time with me. Because I know as a mom, and you get in your mind all these different things you got going, and it can be easy to say, just a minute, let me finish this, I'll play with you in just a minute, let me finish, and then we never get around to playing. So just let that be something your kids can have good memories of as they get older, that, mom put the housework aside and hung out with me for a little bit. Another area in this part is the cooking and the meal planning. And I have a couple of tools that I use for this too, but one of them is plantoeat.com. It's a website you can go and put all your recipes in, and they have a 30-day free trial, so if you want to go on and try it, but you put all your recipes in, and then you can put on the calendar what days you want, and then it'll generate a shopping list. That's just a tool that I've used that's been really helpful. Another thing that has been really helpful is this guy likes to grill.
I am the grill master.
It's easy just to stop by the store and pick up like a pack of meat or something. Get your husband involved. I mean, if he has a grill, let him use it. If he doesn't have a grill, go buy him a grill.
There you go. Some of you guys, you've been looking for a reason to get a grill.
Yeah.
She has spoken. That's wisdom right there.
So I know meal planning can be tough, but if you can find an hour a week and just sit down and plan out a few days, it just really takes the stress off of not having to go to the store every single day. Like, what's for dinner tonight? Oh, let me go to the store. I can't go to the store every single night, so it just takes some pressure off of me knowing that I have what I need in the kitchen and I can put together a meal. And so just to kind of help you guys out with some meal planning, we put together a list of meals, and it's on our website, lifepointnow.com/overwhelmed. It's all the recipes, all the shopping list that you'll need. Maybe that's the first step for some of you guys, is just to get 1 week worth of meals, and maybe that can help you not feel so overwhelmed with that.
There we go. People are like, yes, I know what we're eating this week. Hey,
Yeah.
use that as a buffer. Say, we're going to take these recipes, we're going to use them for a week, and we'll start planning out next week. Just being able to get ahead relieves so much stress. The third area where we all have a tendency of feeling overwhelmed is the area of finances. Finances are a big deal. It affects every single one of us. Statistics say that 75% of American households are living paycheck to paycheck, which means there's tremendous stress because all it takes is one, maintenance on the car or one thing around the house that breaks, and we're just totally upside down, and it wreaks havoc in our marriage and adds tons of stress on our family. There was an article in Huffington Post, and there was a study done at Kansas State University, and they said this: arguments about money are by far the top predictor of divorce. They say it's not children, sex, in-laws, or anything else. It's money for both men and women. Imagine what would happen in our homes if we removed that number one area of contention in our home. I mean, it'd just be amazing what would happen. And really for us, that we started off kind of on the wrong foot financially, and I just, added to it. And it was a sore spot for us in our relationship.
Yeah, I wasn't taught how to handle money growing up, but I thought, since I went to school for accounting, I should have an idea how to handle money. And I did pretty good, but that responsibility was on my shoulders. So I carried the weight of that, the burden of that. He would make the money and spend the money without telling me. So, come home with golf clubs one day. I'm like, where did that money come from? And he didn't know what amount of stress that put on me, seeing the money, seeing that it wasn't there, and he was spending it. And we just got into a lot of debt that way.
Yeah, I had a hard time grasping the fact that I earn the money, why can't I spend the money? And apparently the reason I couldn't spend it is because I already spent it.
Yeah.
And so that caused a real issue. And anytime we talk about money, it would just turn into this fight because it was always about how I spent too much and we don't have enough, and I just didn't want to hear it, right? She was just killing the vibe in the house. And it's kind of what it felt like. And so, how do you know? Opposites attract, right? So in most marriages, there is there's the spender, right? And there's the saver. Okay, or as I like to call it, there's the fun person and the not so fun person, right? So there's tons of fun and not so fun. And so as long as I could spend money, I was having fun. Well, I didn't realize the stress it was putting on her, and we were digging a hole that made life crazy. And so we had to come to the point where we realized that this isn't working and it's killing our relationship and it's really wreaking havoc. And so we made a plan, and it took us a couple years to be able to get out of all that consumer debt that we had incurred. And honestly, the Bible speaks loads about finances. I said earlier that if your life is out of control, it's evidence that God's not in control. And I would say in your finances, if your finances are out of control, it's evidence God's not in control. And it would be worth taking some time and just doing a little bit of studying on what God's Word has to say. We have tools on our website. You can go to our website, lifepointnow.com. You'll see resources on there that will give you some insight. I'll give you a 30-second crash course on what the Bible says about how we should handle our money. Here it is in 30 seconds. And it basically says this: when we receive our paycheck, which is a gift of the Lord, the very first thing we do is return 10% to God. That's the tithe. Then we take some more and we put it in savings, and then we live on the rest. So Bible crash course on finances would be tithe, save, live on the rest. Tithe, save, live on the rest. Say it with me. Tithe, save, live on the rest. One more time. Tithe, save, live on the rest. See, the hard part is putting this in place because it requires a tremendous amount of faith. Most of us are stretched beyond capacity already. So if we put God first, we're like, how in the world is this going to happen? And it means we've got to reorganize. But I'm telling you, when we put God first, He blesses the rest. And I know the idea of tithing may be just a totally crazy foreign concept. This may be the first time you've even heard the word. There's a little insert on the seat back in front of you that says 90-day tithe challenge. I encourage you, just take that home, read it, go on our website, learn a little bit more, because God's blessing is on your finances when you put Him first. And the last thing I'll say just regarding finances that has helped us a lot is getting on the same page. Very much like Google Calendar helped us with our schedule, there's an application that we use called YNAB. It's just 4 letters, YNAB. There's an app for your phone. There's an app for your computer. And it's a way of doing our budgeting. And so when I'm out getting gas, there's a line item called Jeff's Gas. And I will fill up my car and I'll deduct that money from there on the app. And it'll show me, here's how much I have left. And there's Jeff's spending money and Port City Java money. And it's a way of telling your money where to go rather than wondering where it all went. And so it's staying ahead and having a plan for it. But finances are a way that just have a tendency of wreaking havoc in the home. And I encourage you, YNAB has a free trial as well. So you could sit down as a couple, talk about that, have a budgeting, have a planning meeting, and you're going to find a whole lot more peace because of that. Here's the fourth and final area that has a tendency of just overwhelming us in the home. And this is in the marriage relationship, just in the marriage itself. Let me ask you this question while you're writing the word marriage. When was the last time, if you're married, when was the last time you carved out time for yourselves to be together, like on a date, without kids, focused on each other? When was the last time? And if you can't recall a moment in the not too distant past, then it's time to get back to making your marriage a priority. This is not something that we did very well in the early days of our marriage.
No, it probably wasn't until we had been married for like probably 9 years that we started getting this. And part of it was I didn't feel comfortable leaving my kids with people, and we didn't have time, and just maybe we didn't have, well, obviously we didn't have the money to pay for a babysitter or go out because we weren't managing our money wisely. So, guys, if you want to show your wife love this week, plan a date for her. It's a great feeling. Like when he tells me or calls me up on the phone and says, hey, you want to go out this week? It means he was thinking about me. It means he's planning, to show me love. He would take care of the child care, like line up sitters, and then have a place that he wanted to take me. We didn't have to, like, where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? That always happens. So it just makes me feel loved that he is interested in spending time with me. And maybe you don't have the money to pay for a babysitter. There's people that have kids that you can probably swap childcare with, or maybe you can pay for a babysitter, but you can't go out to a really nice restaurant or a movie or something. Just go to the park, take a picnic, and go to the park and just spend time talking and looking at each other. I mean, maybe you haven't looked at each other in a while.
Baby. Is this awkward?
Yeah.
But it is a big deal. It's a big deal, and we make light of it and we joke. But think back to, guys, I'm going to put this on you for a moment, but think back to the dating days, right? You were creative. You were spontaneous. You were generous. You were planning dates. And she's like, oh, I found the most amazing guy. He's thinking of me all the time. And then you get married and you're like, I got her. Right? And then sadly, a lot of that stops. And life gets busy. I get that. I mean, most of us, we don't plan on getting married and then quitting all that romance and thoughtful stuff. It happens. Then you throw a kid in the mix, and the kid's like, pay attention to me, and I pooped myself again, and I'm hungry, and and everything is about the kid, and then, you realize that then another kid enters the mix, another kid, and before you know it, it's been like 18 or 25 years, and it's all been about the kids, and suddenly they finally someday move out, and you're like, thank you, Jesus, and you look at your spouse, and you're like, who are you again? And you realize that you went from this intimate, passionate love relationship to like roommates that were just managing the madness, and it happens all the time. And what we realize is what caused us to fall in love in the first place gets put on the back burner, and we tell ourselves it's just kind of crazy right now, and we just don't have the time, and we don't have the money. And I would say you can't afford not to spend time together. As a matter of fact, I think the greatest gift you're going to give your kids is the picture of a healthy marriage. They need to know that we love you and you are important, but this marriage is even greater. Someday you're moving out and we're still together. So that means that my wife is a priority. And so our kids have even come to know that almost on a weekly basis at our house, we're going out. And it's easier for us now because our kids are old enough to stay home. But for, even when we didn't have that luxury of just leaving them, it was something that we made sure that we had time for and we put in our day. And I know, date nights can be expensive. So like Michelle said, find some friends that have kids. And, hey, this week we'll watch yours and next week you watch ours. And, just find ways to make it work. It's that important. And if worst case, you go get coffee and stare at each other, hey, that's better than nothing, right? And so one of the things we wanted to do, we thought this would be awesome if this week more Life Pointers went on date nights than ever before. And so here's what we did. We have several restaurant owners here at Lifepoint, and we said, would you be willing to offer a Lifepoint discount to people at Lifepoint if they come to your restaurant and just acknowledge, just say, hey, we're from Lifepoint, and would you give them a special of some sort? And they said, absolutely. So you can go on our website and find a list of these restaurants. We've got a picture right here. And so here's just a couple restaurants here in town, and I highly recommend these. Love these places. You're going to see, if you're like, hey, all we got is some money to get a coffee and stare at each other, Big Apple Bakery down at CB. They're going to give you a discount discount, which means you can probably afford a cupcake too. So go there, get a cupcake, half the thing, and just stare at each other if you want. And people will be like, they're from Lifepoint and they haven't been on a date in a while, all right? Be totally cool, all right? If you love seafood, Michael's Seafood, I love it. They're incredible. Shelly's a great friend. Go there. You're going to see San Juan Cafe, phenomenal food. Nicola's Italian with a twist. I love Nick and Chrissy. And anytime I go there, I end up taking pictures of my food, right? And so you guys, if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen my food. It's amazing. All of these places, just go sometime this week. And when you get there, let them know you're with Lifepoint, and they're going to give you a discount and hook you up. And my encouragement to you is this. When you get there, sit down. And guys, do this. Sit on the same side of the table. You know, remember how you used to? And slide kind of close, and people are going to be like, oh, look at them. They're probably newlyweds. And you'd be like, no, 16 years, baby. 16 years. Keeping it hot, right? And then take a picture of yourselves. Snap a little picture. Post it online so your friends are all jealous of you, and then put your phones away, all right? Phones away at that point, and just enjoy time together, staring at each other, talking about life, talking about dreams. Because here's what I know. When we get back to making this a priority, oh man, it means the world to our kids, and it strengthens our relationship. Here's what I know. What God creates works. It does. God created marriage. He created family. It will work. In a world that says it no longer works, it works when we do things God's way. And I know that there's not a marriage in this room that is beyond repair. There are actually couples at Lifepoint Church that had been divorced. They both met Jesus, and they ended up getting remarried. It's an incredible privilege that I've been able to be a part of. And so I know that there's no marriage beyond repair. There's no individual beyond repair. There's no family so broken that God can't restore it. You know, he's done that in our life. We've been married 16 years, and we admit it's been the best 8-9 years of our life. The first ones, they were rough. We're still not sure how we got kids out of that season of our life. It was like I slept on my side of the bed as far as I could, and she slept on hers, and we just didn't, nothing was working. And some of you were like, I think he just said, yes, I did. Right? It was tough. It was tough couple years. Bunch of years. But here's what I know. God has done a restoration in our family. I grew up in a family where for 3 years, my mom and my dad were separated. My dad was having an affair, and people said there's no hope for your family. And that's what you would have thought if you were on the outside looking in. And as a kid, that was devastating. Devastating to know that your dad is off with another woman. Devastating to go on vacation and your dad says, hey, when you talk to mom, don't tell her about dad's friend that's here. Devastating. Devastating as a kid to wonder what I did to cause my dad to leave. And when everybody said there was no hope, 3 years of my mom being faithful, 3 years of my mom praying, 3 years of my mom hanging in there. God did a restoration process literally 27 years ago, right around this weekend. This weekend, God can do that. He can restore. For those of you that know my parents, they're very active here at Lifepoint, and they pour into couples. And maybe what you need to do is you need to swallow your pride and be willing to admit that there's something wrong. And you need to be willing to sit down and talk to somebody. Talk to them. Talk to them. They find tremendous joy in encouraging couples and seeing couples find hope. That's what you need to do today. Maybe, maybe it's getting somebody to pray for you. Maybe that's the step you need to take today. See, last time I checked, my Bible says God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. What he did in our life and in my family, he can do in yours. If you're willing to say, God, I want to do things your way, whether it's at home, in our finances, in our schedules. God, our life's out of control. We need to put you in control. We need to put you in control. Here's what I'd love to do. I want to pray for you as we wrap up. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes with me?